Hey everybody, and welcome to the live stream of the SMC Journal podcast. I am Scott Moore, your host, and I want to thank everybody for being on the live stream today. This is something that I want to try to do a little more of, just to try to get more updated content to you and respond to some of the things that you guys have been talking to me about on social media. And so we'll try to start doing these as often as I can, and I'd like to hear your feedback about these live streams as well. So I'm Scott Moore, your host, and I first want to talk to anybody who has never heard of this, and you found out about this just recently, that I have this podcast called the SMC Journal, and you have no idea who Scott Moore is. This is a channel on YouTube that I do as often as I can, and this particular podcast is about software engineering. We sometimes talk about IT infrastructure, but anything to do with IT is game. And we are talking today specifically about performance engineering in the state that we are in 2024. And some of this is just my perspective. Some of this is from what you're telling me on LinkedIn, because I have a lot of performance engineers that I'm connected to online, and we talk a lot. So this is kind of where this started. I'm going to go over this, the whole incubus of this, of where this all originated from today. And I got a lot of stuff to talk about, as well as just kind of tell you what I'm doing, where I'm going to be doing in the near future, and so you can kind of keep up, because there's a lot going on in Scott Moore's world. I'll talk a little bit about, towards the end of this live stream, all the other shows that I have, if you're familiar with the Performance Tour, DevOps Driving, and some of the other ones that I'm working on. But we'll talk about that. So thank you for watching this live stream. Even if you're not watching it live and you're watching afterwards, appreciate you joining me. So today's topic, let's just get right into it. We're going to talk about the state of performance engineering as I see it in 2024, and we're a little over midway through the year. And folks, I got some kind of bad news. I don't think it's very good right now. I don't think the state that we're in is very good, and I see some of you agree with me. However, we do know that performance is a non-negotiable in IT, especially in software. It's not something that is a nice to have. It is a must-have. And you have to have software that works first. Then you have to have software that works for more than one person and is also secure. And there's this, balance between making it secure, making it fast, and it has to work. So you have to have functionality, and then you have to have these performance and security and other types of requirements that make this software work good. But performance is going to have to get done. Now, your application will force you to do it at some point if you're not getting good performance, because if you don't do performance well, you are going to lose customers, which means you're going to lose money. You're going to have a bad reputation, and you're probably increasing the risk of an outage or other things. So you got to do performance. Now, who's doing that? Is it a performance engineer? Is it a quality assurance engineer? Is it just somebody who does automation? Is it now a site reliability engineer, an SDET? Is it an architect? Who is it? So even if it's different titles, performance is going to have to be done. So where are we in terms of the performance engineer? I kind of see this as a sort of a dying art, the performance engineer being the specialist over this. I see this being taken over by generalists, and I don't think that's a good idea. Now, in the DevOps world, there is this idea that you can have generalists and you can have developers do a lot of the work that a specialist used to do, and that's arguable. I would disagree. I would think you need specialists. Yes, you can have the generalists, but there's a minimal scope to that. And there are schools of thought on both sides of this. I just happen to land on the side that I think you still need specialists. Like, you're always going to need specialists. And I think performance is one of those things that's just a niche skill set that you're always going to have that for. I'm not saying that's true for everything. In the world of the medical, you have that idea. You can go to a general practitioner doctor if you've got a sprained ankle, broken bone, a cold, flu, things like that, sore throat. But when you need brain surgery, or you need your heart has an issue, something specific like that, you probably need a specialist for that. So that's my take on that. So I want to say hi to Patar. Thank you for joining. Hey, Jacob, good to see you. Thank you for being on. And feel free to put comments in and ask questions. I will try to get to them as much as I can, but there's only one of me, so I got to pay attention to everything at one time. But so let's get into talking about where this kind of originated at. And so I'm going to take you to a little presentation. Let me turn my little camera on here. A little over a month ago, Hassan from Gartner, and I don't want to butcher any last names, so I'm going to be just doing first names today. Gartner published the 2024 hype cycle on site reliability engineering. And this is where site reliability engineering is where performance engineering now sits, which was enlightening to me. I did not know that until this was published. And if you don't know about Gartner's hype cycles, let's look at what it looks like. This is what it is. And it's saying that all of these things that Gartner is tracking is part of site reliability now. Now, the reason I was so surprised is because performance engineering has been around as long as computer science and IT has been around. It's been, 40, 50 years now. I wouldn't think this would be something new. Now, I haven't heard about site reliability engineering, but in the last, 10, 15 years, maybe, we're following what Google is saying about some of this stuff. But just look at where they're saying this is at. Now, I need to explain this curvature. So a hype cycle has 5 basic parts to it. You have this technology that Gartner starts tracking. They put a name on it, and then they start with the hype, right? It's the new greatest thing. What are we hearing hype about right now? AI, ChatGPT, text to video, music from text, anything that's going on with large language models. That is happening right now like crazy. Every day there's some new AI thing. So there is a huge hype cycle around AI and LLMs and what people are calling AI, right? At some point, the smoke and mirrors needs to be blown away, right? So when that happens, people realize, hey, this wasn't everything that everybody said it was, and there are some problems like, hey, when I type in some of this stuff to get answers out of AI, it's hallucinating on me and it tells me complete lies, and it's gaslighting me, putting me into a whole new reality, and I can lie to it and say, no, that's not right, and it'll agree with me. I mean, it's stuff like that you start losing trust in this stuff. So that leads to the next phase, which is this peak of inflated expectations. You overpromised, you overhyped, and now we got to do something about it. And that gets people depressed because it wasn't the be-all, end-all that they thought it was going to be. So you reach the trough of disillusionment. There's this downhill slope where people are just like, oh, crap, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And then you reach this slope of enlightenment. And this is where people begin to think, well, hold on a second. Let's just not throw everything away. Let's figure out where this technology can be best put and how can we make the best use of it. And then you begin to reach a plateau of productivity. You try to wring out as much as you can out of this technology, and it gets put in its proper place, right? So we've seen that time and time again over the years. That's what Gartner does, and they track this. And they're saying that observability and performance engineering, which go hand in hand, is on a downhill slope into the trough of disillusionment. Now, that is surprising to me as a performance engineer because I did not know that. I thought performance engineering would be on the slope of enlightenment right now, where we were figuring out where performance engineering needs to be at in all phases of a development life cycle, in all areas of hardware, et cetera, et cetera. So that was interesting to say the least. What do you think about it? Do you think that performance engineering is on this is just past a hype cycle? Have we been hyping up performance engineering? I didn't know there ever was any hype around performance engineering, other than maybe some software vendors were overpromising in the 90s and early 2000s that any QA analyst with 1 month of experience can also be a performance engineer and be an expert at this, and you can push 2 buttons in our tool and you can have all this automated stuff that runs and everybody can be a performance engineer. Now that vendor hype, yeah, okay, I get that. Observability, maybe they're going into a trough of disillusionment on observability because those SaaS platforms may cost a lot more than people thought they were because they're grabbing so much data and people are over monitoring and spending millions of dollars a month sometimes just over pulling data, over metricing. Is that a word? Over metricing. So I don't know that I agree with this. So if you have ideas about where you think observability and performance engineering actually fit in this, and I don't know that I even agree that it belongs in site reliability engineering. Now, I don't know where else I would put it, but if you look at the guidebooks from Google on site SREs, you will see that performance is a characteristic of reliability and resilience, right? And so I get that. And those people who are site reliability engineers are also responsible for performance. Now, they're automating toil out of the organization, and in automating that toil, they're trying to automate out bad performance as well. But that's an issue. So I went out on LinkedIn and asked this question. I said, what's your opinion of the state of performance in terms of market size? Do you think that the performance engineers are going away? Are we going to be replaced by SREs? Is our community dying? Why or why not? And many of you had responses to that. And I know some of you are going to be watching the stream, so your name might actually be mentioned in here. So Roger, who is a retired performance engineer, and I'm just going to focus on the highlighted yellow part at the bottom here that says performance engineering, like many other tech roles, is facing a self-inflicted skill shortage due to the gatekeeping practices in the industry. The same can be said for performance engineering, where companies often dismiss thousands of applicants because of unrealistic knockout questions. These skills can often be taught in a matter of hours. I don't know if I agree with that for everything around performance, but yeah, some of it can be started in hours. But it says, he says, if the company has effective onboarding and training. Well, I don't see a whole lot of effective onboarding and training for the performance engineering department. Do you? And any of you who have been doing this for a while, you probably would be like, that's a little sus. But yeah, could you bring people on and ramp them up fast, at least on the basics, queuing theory and just knowing general places to look for performance? I think you can. But I kind of agree. We have this skill shortage and there are gatekeeping practices. We're just going to kick out people if they don't have any experience at it, but we're not offering education. I've said this many times. You can't go to college to be a performance engineer specifically. There's not a criteria for it. There's not a set of books for it. There's portions of chapters of books maybe for it. And most of this comes from the School of Hard Knocks. You get bit. One of the video links that Roger recommended, which I thought was actually pretty cool, was Eric Peterson's QCon presentation from May 2024, and it is called $1 Million Lines of Code. And I will share a link at some point later, probably in the description of this live stream afterwards. But if you look it up, Eric Peterson, $1 Million Lines of Code, it's about a 30-minute presentation. Highly recommend that you take a look at that. And he talks about an engineering perspective on cloud cost optimization. And really that's what, as things have moved to the cloud, that's really the performance engineer's job, is to make it efficient. And making it efficient means that it will cost less. We want to optimize the code. We want to optimize the servers. We want to optimize everything about it, which is going to mean less money, less risk, better performance. My buddy Juan Manuel, I believe he's from Colombia, if I'm not mistaken, software quality assurance manager and senior performance engineer, says the closest I've seen to establishing a community of practice and standards is the Performance Engineering Book of Knowledge, PEBOK, and DevPerfOps. We'll talk about DevPerfOps a little later. That's something that I came up with back in December of last year. To me, it's more about people not knowing about us until they interact with us. And when do they begin to interact with the performance engineers? Unfortunately, when they get bit with a performance issue and all of a sudden they're in need, right? Not the best way to be introduced. What I always tried to do as a performance engineer in my practice, or whenever I still do practice, but I'm talking about as an employee, if I was an employee of a company and they came to our department saying, our website's having a problem, our application's slow, and we really need help right now, I always tried to meet that urgency with the quickest fix that I could, but I didn't stop there. I said, let's fix it, but let's also make a way so that this doesn't happen again, and let's have an effective process for you to have so you never get in this situation. And they always appreciated that, and it made for very good communication moving forward with other departments. So Alexander actually commented and shared additional information on LinkedIn about this, and I thought this was a good comment. He was talking about there's a cycle that goes on, and it happens through the years where, hardware gets cheaper, let's throw hardware at it. When that doesn't work, there's patterns we see, and then there's more problems. And here's what he says: developers can't solve the problems as they weren't educated around performance. causing a rise of demand in the need for performance analysts. And we do see that, but there's not a whole lot of them around. And there's more things to do. There's more users. There's more data. And some tasks require a new approach to performance improvements. We have to keep on changing as technology changes. The way I handle performance around Kubernetes deployed applications are totally different than the way that I would do it on-prem, bare metal servers, right? So we have even more demand for performance experts that know the latest, greatest in how to approach it. And then he says, due to budget and supply issue, the project manager starts asking developers and architects to do the performance work on their own. Let's shift this stuff left. Well, some of the stuff you can shift left, but not all of it. And not everybody's going to have that knowledge. So things will slip through the cracks. And I don't care if it's waterfall, agile, DevOps, whatever you want to call it today, monoliths, microservices. The laws of physics exist, and when resources get depleted, problems are going to be experienced, and you have to have somebody who understands where to look, how to approach, the right way to relieve those bottlenecks, remove those bottlenecks. So the need is always going to be there for that expertise. How are we getting that expertise? How are we educating people on how to deal with that? That is a problem that I see in the industry right now. And I'm trying to solve that problem, but I'm only one person, and it's something that we're going to have to do together as a community as we try to build it up. Let's continue forward. Peter Booth, who is also he's always commenting on a lot of my stuff. He says, I'm puzzled. There's been tremendous innovation in Linux performance tools over the past decade. There's been similar improvements in front-end performance and technology and low latency. So I can get much more done today than a decade ago, yet the industry seems to be less informed than in the past. Cloud confusion abounds, and many are accepting that some cloud promises are unrealistic. And completely agree, we can do more than we ever have, and we can have more innovation than we've ever had. However, we still have less informed people and educated people around how to deal with the performance aspects of this, whether that's in the cloud or elsewhere. Michael, Senior Engineering Manager, says, and this was a great to-the-point comment, shifting things left moves it down, not up. The better performance and engineering comes from better best practices. And I know a lot of people, they don't like the word best practices, but best practices, let's just say better practices than probably what you're doing right now. Better frameworks, tool sets, and scalable services. We do build better services by using better pieces, more factory, less craft. Somewhat, I agree with that, but I still believe the craft needs to be there somewhere, and there is not enough craft going on, in my opinion. Matthew, he says, I'd say that performance engineering by dedicated performance engineers tends to disappear, albeit slowly. It's being replaced by development engineers, site reliability engineers, with them taking on the performance responsibilities, coached by senior performance specialists. The field itself isn't going anywhere. Completely agree with you. The field is not going anywhere. I said that up front. But can an SRE take on the responsibility of advanced performance engineering the way a specialist could and still keep up with all of the things they have to do outside of that? This is something that keeps popping up in the industry as a challenge that causes mental overload by people. Cognitive overload is what it's referred to. That topic never came up before we started having site reliability engineers. And I think there's a correlation there. We are asking people to do more than ever. We're asking more skill sets to be known. We're asking for unicorns to be, every person on the team to be a unicorn, and we're trying to build companies on unicorns. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair to people, and people get burnt out because of that. I'm going to show you a report that discusses that in just a moment. Tejas talks about SREs. While SREs would focus more on automating most of the infrastructure, performance engineers still hold their importance in help scaling the application. A major positive thing or major positive change which I have observed is that performance testing and engineering go hand in hand now, which earlier were treated as two different items. And I do agree with that. We used to have department where it was like, okay, we're software engineers who get down into the nitty gritty to actually fix the problem. We need somebody to run a load test. We'll get a QA person or just a performance tester to do a load test, and we'll tell them what we want them to do. And then when they give us the results, then the big boys the adults in the room will take over and we'll figure it out. And I think that being combined is actually a good thing. Upskilling just performance testing into engineering is not a bad thing. And I think that should be the way it should be. All right, so here's something kind of cool. I've released a couple of funny little pictures on the internet this week. One of them was Robert Downey Jr. just announced that he was going to be Dr. Doom in the new Marvel movie that's coming out in about a year and a half. And I presented this. This got more views than any picture. There was one of two. This was one of the highest rated things that I had on LinkedIn this week. And so thank you for everybody for liking that and commenting on that. But it's kind of struck a nerve, right? That here's another one that I released. This was from the Olympics. There was a big thing about the guy from Turkey who came out and he didn't have any headgear, and he was just like, they thought he was like a hitman. He just came out there and just shot it, and he won. And I just put this out there. This is the difference between an SRE who's having to work on a performance issue out of all the other stuff. They're gearing up for it. They've got all the right things, but they may not be as experienced as a performance engineer who just laser focused, just walks out there and just kind of can almost shoot from the hip and hit the target every time. It's an experience thing. And I'm not just trying to make fun of site reliability engineers, guys. It's not about that. It's just that there is this need for specialization, and that's what this was all about. But that got a lot of comments, a lot of suggestions for improvement, and I think it's kind of bringing the community together. And more people have connected to me on LinkedIn because of those pictures, and I think that's just kind of cool. So let's go back to this cognitive overload situation. If you are not familiar with this report, you should probably check it out. It is the 2024 Site Reliability Report from Catchpoint. Now, they put this report out every year, and I want to say this is maybe the this is the 6th year that they've actually put out this report, where they go out and they get information across multiple companies and ask them a lot of questions about site reliability engineering as it pertains to their job. There are a handful of insights that they came up with, and I'm not going to read this document to you. You can read it for yourself. But if you go to Catchpoint's website and you look up the Site Reliability Report for 2024, there's a download for it. I don't even think you have to fill out a form to register or anything. They just let you download it. It's a PDF. A couple of the things that they have in here is site reliability engineering is not platform engineering, but they both develop capabilities. Now, platform engineering is kind of making a space for itself. We'll be talking about that in the future on the SMC Journal podcast. Also, AI is not replacing human intelligence anytime soon. Kind of knew that. But also, no single monitoring tool does it all, and in the darkness bind them. I think that's a Lord of the Rings reference. We're asking site reliability, and a lot of these reports will talk about the SREs being overloaded with data from multiple tools. There's a tool sprawl issue in the industry that's expensive. There's this, I'm having to do all of these things: performance, functionality, automation, remove toil, security, and other things, usability. And I have to know it all, and I have to be able to do it all. And I'm a find it and fix it, person to solve every problem. It just gets to be too much after a while, and people get overloaded with that. And that's not necessarily a good thing. If you're a site reliability engineer, and you haven't checked out the report, I would definitely recommend it that you check that out. All right, so the next thing, let's go back to a comment that Juan said about the closest thing I've seen to a community is DevPerfOps. Now, that's awesome that he would mention that, because last December I started talking about the need for DevPerfOps, and next Tuesday, on the 6th of August, I believe is next Tuesday, the next SMC Journal, I'm going to talk in depth about what is DevPerfOps. So I'm not going to go into it in detail here, but there'll be a whole episode. It's about 25 minutes long where I go into it and I will explain it. But for those of you who haven't heard of DevPerfOps, I want to show you the website that you can go to and check that out. It's devperfops.org. It's basically taking the concepts of DevSecOps and changing it all around to be around performance engineering terminology. And we have a manifesto, we have blog entries, we have a lot of things about DevPerfOps on the site. And the reason I'm mentioning that here is because the state of performance engineering 2024 is one of, we need to have a community. This is my opinion. We need to have a community like platformengineering.org has a community. And platform engineering has been around, what, 18 months, 24 months, something like that. And, you know, realistically, when did you start hearing about platform engineering? They already have platformengineering.org. FinOps has an organization out there, finops.org. We need an organization around DevPerfOps. If DevSecOps can exist, and I understand, we'll talk about that on the show next week. Those purists that are in DevOps will say we don't have a need for anything except Dev and Ops, and everything you say is perf, security, and all that stuff is in Dev if you do it right. I understand that, but DevSecOps still exists, and it's still talked about, and we've got all these companies that are behind it, endorsing it. I think there still needs to be something for DevPerfOps. Something, if it's not DevPerfOps, something to bring our performance community together of all performance testers, performance engineers, people who are in observability, and extending an arm out to the site reliability engineers, because performance is part of their duties as well. Developers as well, extending it out to developers. So operations people and developers, we're extending the arm. Developers should focus on performance, but they have a limited scope. A developer wants to write code. They don't want to be a performance engineer. I get that. But they have a responsibility to write performant code. So their scope of performance should be limited to their scope of work, right? What they're working on, their code, their function, their integrated code. Then there needs to be somebody who looks at not just the individual trees, but the forest and says, okay, let's apply better performance standards around not only your code, the infrastructure that it runs on, the containers themselves, the hardware, the network, all these pieces. The end user experience ultimately is that's the responsibility of this bigger level performance engineering group. So, and how they get along, I think that all needs to be defined. And I think if we're going to talk about education, I think this foundation of DevPerfOps needs to have badging. There needs to be certification, education classes. There probably needs to be a conference so we can at least have a boondoggle once a year. Maybe that's online for the first couple of years. But I think that it's needed in the industry. And it's something that I want you to think about. And I'm only one person, but I'm willing to help put this thing together. But I actually want this to be a nonprofit organization. I think the technical name of it in the US is a 501c6. It's just like a 501c3, except it's more for a business type organization. It's the same form, and it takes maybe a lawyer and about 6 months worth of time. So I don't think it's hard to do, but I think it does need to be done. So I'd like for your thoughts around that. So if you have a chance next week, whenever the next SMC journal comes out, watch the episode on DevPerfOps and give me some feedback on that. And if you agree with that and you'd like to be involved, you can actually reach me. And I'll tell you how to reach me right now. You can actually email me at heyscott@smcjournal.com, and we can have a conversation. Of course, I'm always on LinkedIn and those other platforms. So LinkedIn is another good way to reach out to me or comment to me as well. We're about 30 minutes in. Those are the main things that I want to talk about. I do want to mention of some of the things that I'm actually doing and going to be doing soon. The next thing I'm going to be involved with is a conference out in Las Vegas, August the 20th through the 22nd. It's the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit in Las Vegas. This is like more of a DevOps type conference. Gene Kim is going to be there, and he's part of this ETLS summit. I believe I'm going to have an interview with him for my show, DevOps Driving. So that's going to be very exciting. I'm also going to be talking to somebody from Netflix and some other folks that really understand DevOps and how to bring good quality process to DevOps so that quality and the testing and that doesn't get in the way of what the developers are wanting to do in a pure DevOps model. So I'll be out there. I'll be doing interviews. If you're going to be at this conference, definitely hit me up. If you'd like to be on the show, we'll do an interview and we'll make it happen. So I'll be out there the 20th through the 22nd. I'm also going to be in Dallas the end of the month. I believe it's going to be about the 27th of August. So information about that will be forthcoming, but I'm going to be doing a meetup out in Dallas, Texas then, and I will post more information about that on LinkedIn when it can be available. But I believe the Honorable James Pulley will be involved with that event as well if it happens. So let's talk about some of the things you may have noticed about some of the sites and things that I'm doing. I've done some rebranding recently. So scottmoore.consulting, the site has actually gotten an update in logos and branding. And so if you want to reach out to me through this site, you can. But I wanted to mention a couple of my other shows in case you haven't seen them or haven't heard of them. I've got the show, The Performance Tour, that comes out, sponsored by Tricentis. There's about 3 years worth of episodes of that out there. We also do meetups, physical meetups throughout the country. DevOps Driving, DevOpsDriving.com is another show that I've got that's also sponsored by Tricentis. And there are shows that talk about DevOps, but most of them are focused on the developer and the development of the code. This is, QA is supposed to be in the dev side of DevOps, but this just gives that focus, that highlight of QA and how to operate properly within a DevOps model, because people still want to know how to do that. There's also the Security Champions, which is thesecuritychampions.com, and we talk about security, DevSecOps, AppSec, InfoSec, whatever you want to call it. So there's websites for all of this. There are episodes for all this. They all come through my main channel and the SMC Journal. So that is what's going on with me. Trying to see if there's something else out there. Let's go to the SMC Journal.com and take a look at that site. We've also updated the logo for the SMC Journal, which is also available in audio format as well if you want to listen to any of the major platforms. We push it through Podbean, but it goes to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's on all the major things. So if you're just driving around in your vehicle and you don't want to get distracted by watching it, you can do that. Here are some of the latest episodes. We just had an interview with Steve Flanders, who just has written a book about mastering open telemetry and observability. Highly recommend that. We've been talking about eBPF performance and pre-sale stuff. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with that. I'm also going to show you, that's not what I wanted to show you. If you have not seen the information about my coffee, then we should talk about that. The 503 blend coffee. So if you go to the performancetour.com, you can check out the new 503 blend coffee out there. There's a whole video that I show where the coffee is made at. It's really good coffee, guys. It's a half Colombian, half Peru. It is all coffee from above 4,000 feet, and they bring it down. They can't even get cars up to get the coffee. They have to bring it down through mules, and there's a whole video that shows you how to do that. You should pick some of that coffee up today. It's really good, but if you get some and you try it, then I expect a full review online. Unless it's bad, then don't do anything with it. Maybe the last thing that I wanted to mention here is I'm trying to put together a mailing list, and I'm trying to figure out how often I should actually reach out to people, because I don't want to spam you. I don't want to communicate too often, but I don't want to lose your attention, because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's 4 different shows going on. I'm producing some shows for West Networks about PepLink devices and network routers and things like that as well. So there's just so much going on that you might want to keep up with me. Then the way to do that is to go to scottmoore.consulting, and then at the top you can click on a link that says mailing list. And if you do that, you'll see this little form here. And this is good for all the shows and all the blog updates. And I try to grab the minimal amount of information, because if you're on this, I know this. So if there's a in-person event that's happening, that's live in your area, and I know that you're in a particular city that I'm going to be in, I can let you know about that as well, in addition to just letting you know. I was thinking maybe once a week is what I should do for this mailing list. You can let me know if you agree, if once a week is too often. or not often enough. But I think once a week is a good balance to let you know what's going on, because there is new stuff coming out every week. I would say there's at least 2 videos coming out from me every week, and then there's blog articles. I write blog articles for the Testum website for Tricentis, their Testum products, and so that comes out. So just so much stuff to keep up with. So now it's really your turn to reach out to me and let me know what you're thinking about. What do you think the state of performance 2024 is? And what do you think about anything? You can contact me several different ways. I am on most of the social media platforms, mostly LinkedIn though, but if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a page. It'll show you where you can reach out to me and where you can find me. And then you can also, like I said before, you can email me at heyscott@smcjournal.com. Another really great thing that you could do if you have not done already is like this video, subscribe to my channel. Let's prove to YouTube that this channel has some content that people need to be looking at, and it will guide and direct people there. If you're a software engineer, you're in software development, you're in testing, performance engineer, you should be subscribed to this channel, in my opinion, because I think it's worth it. So I'm going to take a quick peek over here at the channel here on YouTube and see some of the comments out here. So first of all, I said hey to Patar, Jacob. Hey, Ben Strickland, how you doing, buddy? I'm glad you joined. And that's all I see out there right now, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are watching. And some people are watching this streaming through Facebook. Some are streaming through LinkedIn Live. We will have to go pro on Twitter in order to get a stream through there at the same time. But those 3 are the 3 platforms right now that I'm going to do this on. And we'll see where that goes. So I'm hearing that maybe once a week would be awesome. It's not too much. Patar, hopefully we'll get to see you in Dallas very soon. And Ben, what has started the trend towards generalists away from DevOps specialists? Well, in DevOps, there's an idea that you don't really need specialists. And where that comes from is the Phoenix Project and some of Gene Kim's books. The trend, I'm sorry, maybe you did say towards generalists. The trend away from generalists would be people like me and a few others that I could talk about who have said, hey, maybe we still need some of these other specialized skill sets. Now, I did an interview, the first episode of DevOps Driving. I talked to Brian Finster, who led the DevOps Dojo for Walmart, and they had a very successful DevOps program. But he says this, he says, look, I totally love specialists. I love the performance engineers, and I appreciate what you do. But as a developer, what I'm thinking is just stay out of my way. Don't get in my way. Don't cause friction in the code development pipeline, because if you do, you're making my life miserable as a developer. So figure out a way to not slow me down. And the way we kind of discussed doing that is give the developers the tools they need in their format, like in their IDE that they're working on their code. Give them enough tools that they can address performance as much as they can before they hand it off up the pipeline. And then in the pipeline, have things that the performance engineers can have in place to make performance continuous, where we've set maybe these toll gates up, or we've set up these places. So we're checking for performance at a much bigger scale, but it's as automated as it can possibly be. So we keep that pipeline going, and we keep fast development happening so that we just stay out of their way, and we're able to find the performance issues. And there's a balance there that needs to be struck. But with smaller amounts of code being deployed more often, it means more testing, but less testing per deployment. So if you only change one line of code and things just go bad, you know what line of code you need to revert back to, right? And so that gets into talking about canary builds and things like that, and limited rollouts, which CrowdStrike. But we won't get into that today. Hey, Matthew. Hey, thanks for joining. And so he had a question about the European Performance Tour. So I will mention this because you people are so great. You're on the live stream and you're watching. So a secret that I will reveal here is I would really like to take the Performance Tour on the road into Europe. I've never done that before. It's only been in the United States. However, I don't know if I want to just limit it to the Performance Tour because, as you know, I do multiple shows. So I'm thinking of just calling this the Scott Moore Tech Roadshow. So you may have seen that I put a poll out on LinkedIn that said, hey, if we did a Tech Roadshow, how would we pay for it? Because unfortunately, it costs money for me to actually travel and go places and do things. I know that's a surprise to some of you who don't use money at all, but it happens. So how are we going to pay for it? And it was like, we got to either have corporate sponsors. If we have totally corporate sponsors, then, you know, your pieces of meat, you show up at a meeting, you're going to get tracked by salespeople and they're going to run you down and want you to buy something, and you have to put up with that. And I'm being facetious here, but you get the drill. If I charge you for a ticket, I don't have to do that, but it's going to cost more out of your pocket. And then we could have some kind of a split where you don't get as much, your ticket isn't as much, but you do have some sponsors, and we kind of balance it, and that way. Still got to figure out how that's going to work. Half of you basically said, just under 50% said, no, I don't care, screw you. It needs to be free. I'm not paying for anything. Yeah, you probably don't need to show up to the event. What we're trying to do with these events is distill a lot of knowledge into a small amount of time. Because if you value something, especially if you're going to pay to go somewhere and get information, what you're looking at for is value per second. You don't want me to bring 30 years of information to you and hand you a book and say, read it. You want me to distill that down and say, here's 30 years of advice that I can give you in about an hour and a half. That's valuable to you, and that's stuff that you can take away and take back with you, and you can actually use that in your practice every day. That's got value to it. If you don't recognize that value, then we probably shouldn't be talking, and you probably don't need to show up at the show. Not trying to be mean or anything, but that's life. So if you can figure out how to make a way so I can get over there, if maybe you work for a company or you know somebody whose company might want to be part of this Tech Roadshow. It doesn't have to be limited to performance. Obviously, we would talk about performance, but maybe it's an AI company. Maybe it's a DevOps company. Maybe it's a company that focuses on Kubernetes or cloud providers. I'm open to any of that stuff, and we just need to have a balance. I don't want it to be it's not going to be a sales pitch if I do it. I would never do that, but there just has to be a feasible way of taking care of it. So thanks everybody for watching the live stream today. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see more of this stuff, just let me know. And if there's specific things that you think we should be talking about and how we build this community and how we build up this knowledge, I'm open to discussing it. And maybe these live streams are a way to get that sort of interaction. So until we meet again, this is Scott Moore thanking you once again for watching the SMC Journal, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.